6 hours later. Later that same evening, several days later. 6 months later, 2 hours later. 4 to 6 weeks later, 1 minute 37 seconds later. 1 debt to society later, 1 pair of pants later. 8 hours later, 298 frozen patties later. 3 hours later. Epilogue. The next day, meanwhile, at the Krusty Krab, 10 seconds later, 346 minutes later, much later, 3 days later, opening night, later, 3,000 years later, 1 week later, 7:59 a.m. 3 weeks later, 3 days later, 2 hours later, 2 hours later, 48 hours later, 8 hours later, the following Thursday, 5 minutes later, 24 hours later, much later, much later, 7 hours later, epilogue. Several song-filled hours later, a few minutes later, a little longer than a few minutes later, 2 hours later, 3 days later, 15 minutes later.